of these things about how to actually turn some of the plots that you use using a plot collection into something that you would use in an actual paper. And that's what we're all aiming for, right? To actually use YT in our publications. So we created this module called EPS Writer, and it actually uses an external PostScript writer to make these images. It's called PYX or Pikes, I think. But you can easily install it. So I haven't, since this last minute, I haven't had update or uploaded anything to a repository or anything online, but you can easily install it with pip install, or if you can do it the old-fashioned way by downloading it from this website and installing it through the regular Python way. But just to give you a sense of what this package actually gives you, so here's the website. You can see, hold on. If we look at some of the examples that I can do, it's pretty powerful. So you can just do, you can create, simple paths like this, or you can actually, what we're looking at are plots that you can actually do. And these are some of the basic plots it can make, but it can go much, you have a lot of control of what you can actually do with pikes. So even you can make an axis on a curve like this. It's pretty awesome, I think. And you can, things like you can use scatter plots. You have almost complete control of what you want to do with this. But I use this package to tie into to YT and actually to grab the images that YT creates and to port them into Pikes. So let's continue on. So to actually include this, you have to import this module before anything, after YT mods, and you include, so it's in the visualization module called EPS Writer, and usually you can alias it to something shorter so you don't have to write this all. So I just aliased it into EPS. So it's very simple to use. And this was my intention. So this is so we've been looking at how to make, so this is what we've been going over for the past 2 years. 2 days, So we load the data set, make our plot collection, and add a density slice. And something important to use because all we want is the image. And we want to use this external package to actually create the color bar and anything in the axes that we want to do. So we don't want YT to create the color bar, so we have to specify that don't create the color bar, don't put it on the side of the image. And we set the width, and all we need to do, so it gives back a plot instance as P1, and all we need to do is feed this object into this call single plot. What does it give us? So you can see that, one thing that was, I'm real particular about plots is if you want a high resolution image, and usually like back in the day that if you want a high resolution image, it's mainly because you want the text to look nice. And if you want to, but that has its drawbacks. It has a large file size, usually a few megabytes or so. But what this package actually does is the image right here, it actually uses JPEG compression. This file is only around 100 kilobytes. So it combines JPEG compression inside the images and line art and text. So if we actually go in, look at this. If we zoom in, into here, if we actually zoom in, you can see that it's very clean, but you can still see the pixelation in this. But that's what you actually want in the actual publication, that it's very clean looking. And that's just me, but I think it's worthwhile to have very nice plots. And see, you can see this is just you have the image and the fonts embedded all within this PDF file, and it can create EPS files and PDF files. But you can do many other things with this. So once you get back this object that this EPS writer gives, you can modify it. And I've only put in 3 different things. You can have a title box that you can put in a scale line that shows you, instead of having axes, you can have a clean, no axis on the on the exterior of the plot and say this much is 1 kiloparsec, or it can have a circle that defines some some object, some clump or some halo. And all you need to do is once you get this this object back from the EPS Writer, you can modify this by calling circle or scale line with some radius and wherever you want this circle to be. And I did the same thing with this title box. So I can say where there's a lot more options that you can feed these as well. You can modify how big the text is, what color it is, what's the background, and so on, and where it is. So I just put this in the center and say, look at me. So it's pretty straightforward. And yes? No, only YT. Only, but it can accept JPEGs as well. Yeah. Yes.
Why did they use color bar false, but there's a color bar?
Because PYX adds it itself. Yes, because that's actually additional graph in there that I constructed. And it also works on 2D histograms as well. So you can see that you create your phase diagram with density, temperature, weighted, with average metallicity, and you can do the same thing. You just say single plot P1, and it plots this up in the same fashion it does before. And what I like about it is in the color bar, it's pretty smart. I don't have to tell it to do anything about it. I just give the min and max of the color bar, and it smartly picks out what's the best tick marks to make. And also has the ability to do multi-plots. So in this example that I show here, you make four different plots. You make a projection density, temperature, and metallicity. And for each one, you can set its own color map. And in the fourth one, we have this same 2D histogram. And we set the width to be 25 kiloparsecs across, and it modifies these plot objects, but it doesn't modify this phase diagram.
Control the order based on how you consider.
Yes. Yeah. And with this multi-plot, it actually goes in reverse. So it goes density, temperature. It's just how it is. We could easily add that you can reverse this in order to actually start up here and go like this. But you can see that, this is what it gives out, but there's some peculiar things that that bothers me, just like what Jeff said, that these axis tick marks are overlapping. So you have the ability to actually set some margins in between. So we can do this by adding margins, and this is actually in centimeters, this 1 centimeter margin in between here. So I can set these apart as well. So I think it's on the documentation. I put in the doc strings inside the source, so it should be in the documentation. But there are many more options that you can specify to tweak your plot. And to say that, say if we don't, this is pretty busy, all this axis, this X and Y axis. So if we have four projections, so in this example, I made another projection of neutral hydrogen fraction. So this everything's on the same scale, so it's kind of, it wastes a lot of space and makes the plot a lot more busy. So we can take away all those axes by saying bare axes equals to true. So these slides are on the website, so I can look at these later and set the margins to 0 again, so everything's abutting each other. But since everything's at the same scale, we can add a scale line and say that 5 kiloparsecs is this big. So those are some of the basics that I wanted to go over for this EPS and PDF writer that we put into YT. And there are several more arguments that you can supply these functions that you can see the documentation for, and you can also modify these objects with any PYX calls. So I think that's the beauty of that. If it's not included in YT and its implementation, you can always modify it with PYX calls. And here are some examples that I've done. So what I did was, this is a projection of dark matter in 30 megaparsec over H box, but so from the implementation in YT, I added this title bar, but what's not included are lines and these these squares. So I just manually put this in. So I want a square here, here, and here, and arrows to these places. And also, you can have, like, here's another example, where you can have, you don't have, a multiplot doesn't have to all have the same size. If you want to focus on, say, one quantity, say this is radiation pressure, and the vectors going along, because that's a highlight of this figure, but you also want to show density, temperature, and metallicity in the same plots. So that's another, you can really get your hands dirty by just modifying, like some of the, like just tweaking your plot to actually show what you want to show in the paper. Okay, that's all I want to say, and thanks.